Hello, everybody. Welcome to 21st Century Coach. I'm Jennifer Fraser, and I'm so pleased to have a guest today who is Dr. Shawn Clark, and she's a transformational coach, which is particularly interesting to me. It's not a expression or a profession that you hear a lot about, and it's just even by the title alone, I think everybody feels in their lives at certain points that they would love to have a transformational coach. We all want to transform things about ourselves. And Shawn has a fascinating story to tell. She's very deeply engaged on a personal and professional level with the education system. And so without further ado, I'm going to say hello. Shawn, hi.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I really wanted to thank you for joining us today on 21st Century Coach and talking to us about your experience.
I'm glad. I'm going to be tardy for my spaghetti dinner, but this is going to be well worth it.
Okay, well, it's easier for me, of course, because I'm on Pacific time and it's not quite dinner yet. So I appreciate you putting your appetite to the side to talk to us today about your journey. So I'm going to begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about what it was like for you to be a student. And at the moment for you when you decided that your path was helping students or being someone for them that was going to be meaningful and change them.
All right. I'm going to dig back a little bit far. I can tell where the downward spiral happened was in middle school, which if you work with kids and if anyone in the audience listening works with children, they do know that sometimes that transitional period when they're in middle school, 7th, 8th grade is very tough, even more so today. So around 7th grade, my parents got a divorce, and I know that that's not uncommon now either. However, something about that led me to take some wrong turns in my life because school was okay. Like I did really well at school, and I felt like me and my siblings were very smart, and we had, good parents, lower middle class upbringing. My dad was a cop. My mom was a medical secretary. So, things should have been fine. But when they split up, me being the middle child and a bit of a rebel, I was totally using that situation to go out all night. I do remember actually underage drinking for the first time as an 8th grader. And that became my life every weekend and, dappling in other things that are illegal. And then getting into a peer group where, we did some vandalism. I was in trouble with the law several times before the age of 17. And then I started really, really detesting going to school. Some things I, kind of built my own story around. It was, other students talking about me and what my life was like and the choices I made on the weekends and, underage drinking and promiscuity, things like that. So, a little bit of it I did to myself. But what really drove me when I started missing 30, 40 days of school, that no one would come to my house. No one would call my house. I don't ever remember a guidance counselor calling me in to say, "Hey, Shawn, you were doing all right not long ago. What's this, downward spiral? Why are all your grades failing? How do you miss 20 days in a row?" And, no one has that conversation with you. And another strange thing, and yes, maybe some of it is due to the alcohol consumption sometimes, but I could barely name more than 2 teachers I had in my high school career. I cannot think of them by name because there was not that impact on my life. There wasn't that deep connection. There wasn't someone following after me. And, I was absolutely escaping situations. And all I needed was at least one good adult, but it would have really helped for a team of them to look after me and to check on me and ask me what's wrong. So long story short, I ended up getting pregnant in high school and then dropping out of school my second senior year because I repeated my first senior year. The senior year, I just dropped out because of attendance, failing grades, all those other things I just talked about. I was so ashamed. I'd go back and I'm like, nope, I'm going to go redo my senior year. I'm going to try this out. I can do this. I can graduate. I'm going to do this. And that's when I got pregnant, dropped out, found a lawyer in the Yellow Pages, literally moved to New York and gave a child up for adoption. And the big driver after coming home from New York and then really deciding, there's no jobs for me. I don't have a high school diploma, and wrapping my head around it after a few, couple years of some jobs like a cocktail waitress. And that was a job that I just was kind of dragging me down. That wasn't really helping me out at the time. I finally decided, do I want that daughter to come back and find me if she ever has the chance to know me and see that I have not made any changes in my life, and to see that I did not work for others and that I did nothing to help kids that were like me. So that's what drove me to get into this career and go into education and take an alternative path to be a teacher.
Oh, that is an absolutely powerful story. It's extremely moving because I guess we all know kids that have been in those situations. If it hasn't been ourselves, we've all seen just the terrible turns that kids can take, that adults take too. And like you say, if you don't have a team, if you don't have a support network, if you don't have somebody that's watching you, like this idea you have about the squad, someone who's always got your back, then it's free fall. And especially for children, it's so incredibly, it can be so damaging. I find it really interesting that it was your daughter that sparked in you some sense of self drive, or was almost like an initiation for you into, I have value, I deserve an education, I want to be the person that I never had in my life. And so can you talk a little bit about, I mean, it's one thing to make the decision, it's quite another to actually make it happen. I think that's where a lot of people break down and they get stuck. So what was it about you that gave you the grit or the perseverance to say, yes, this is what I need to do? And despite such a very difficult background and upbringing and lack of teacher support, you made it happen.
Well, in all honesty, and we talk about being transparent, and I do tell people that that is something that I really try my best at. There, of course, I fail at it sometimes. I really do believe in being transparent. So my daughter, that drive, she was a secret drive, and she was a distant drive because I hid that from people. I came back into town acting like nothing happened. I didn't tell people I was pregnant. I just disappeared.
Of course.
So I even had family members that didn't know that I had a child. So I come back into the mix, and of course I couldn't live in my hometown. I had to go to another city because I wanted to still hide and escape. That was my distance drive, but my secret that I could not tell people. I mean, I did not tell friends.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 years later, I got pregnant again, and my son was the live driver.
Mm-hmm.
I got into tech school after I went and took a GED exam, and I got into a tech school, and I'm literally about to give birth to him, taking a final exam at tech school, and I'm thinking, okay, yes, she was the one driving me. I wanted to be something better when she found me, but actually having to face this son that I gave birth to, knowing that I could not go down this road and disappoint him as well, and I wanted to be a role model to him. It was literally me looking into his eyes, him looking into my eyes. I wanted to be that mother that he could absolutely be proud of. And um, over the years, like everything that's happened in my life, one of my absolutely most touching and prideful moments. And my son's 24 now, and he just recently let me on his social media. That was very rare. He came to my graduation a few years ago when I got my PhD, and someone showed me on his Instagram something he wrote about me. And it was a picture of me in my cap and gown graduating. And it talked about how, even though my mom's been through a lot, because I hid that he had a sister until he was about, I'd say, 17 or 16. So, I mean, all this was hidden. And the things he wrote about me, how he was proud of the accomplishments I did, that I did not graduate. And here I am getting my PhD and all the things I've been through. I mean, that was the moment that I could see a vision for in my head. So, so kind of to wrap this up and make a long story short, I had that vision of my children being so super proud of me that I could stand up and, regardless of the mistakes I made, that they could say, look what my mom did. If she can do this, then I can do this. So, I mean, that was the live in your face driver.
Yeah, I find it really interesting because in the way you're talking about this story, I'm hearing a lot of mention of shame. There's a lot of shame, there's a lot of hiding, there's a lot of secrets. And yet, there's something about you that, along with this whole story, you have a real drive in you to have transparency and to have the confidence and the pride and the love, because it really does take a fair bit of self-love, I think, to look someone in the eye. And a lot of the research that I've done on people who've been really hurt as children, and they've been oftentimes badly bullied as children or abused by their parents, they have a really hard time meeting other people's eyes. And I find it really interesting that instead of shying away from your child's eyes, you looked deeply into your son's eyes, and in a sort of more visionary way, your daughter's eyes were always there for you, and you use that as a way to get stronger rather than as somehow a vulnerability or weakness.
Well, I'm I'm not going to lie about the piece about the shame. The shame, it's almost like it's always a piece of my psyche. It never goes away. I think it's why I try to overachieve and try to infiltrate myself wherever I can to make an impact on others. A piece of it is selfish. I do a little bit of what I do because it actually does help me feel better and it helps take away some of that shame. It's always like I got to make up for all those mistakes I made. And the transparency comes from the fact that once I was able to reveal to my son that he had a older sibling and that these were the mistakes I made and that I could tell him what really happened with me dropping out of high school, because that I never revealed that to him until at the same time I told him about my daughter. So imagine his shock getting all this at one time. That's when the floodgates opened, when I was like, oh my God, a weight has lifted. I don't have to hide this anymore. I can talk about it. I can use it to help others. I can look into people's eyes and hold my head high and say, you know what, I dropped out. I mean, it took, again, we're talking decades of time this took to be revealed.
Yeah.
Um, but you're right. Like I'm driven by it now.
Hmm. I'm just wondering if you find in the schools that you work with, are you seeing that there is a large change in the way children are watched and observed and tracked? Like, do you think that this can still happen today where schools really kind of look the other way when they're encountering some challenging issues with their students?
I think it absolutely happens today. Um, I work within 3 schools right now. One of them much more heavier than the other two. The larger school I'm with, I've been with since January because I took the position of transformation coach, and I'm sure I'll talk about kind of what the mission is for that.
Hmm.
Um, I see this every day, and something that I make a point to do. This is not in my job description, and it takes me hours upon hours upon hours where I don't do any of the supposed real work that I'm supposed to be doing. Is I interview students.
Hmm.
Um, I'll talk to them, and okay, so a couple of weeks ago, I'm not going to say these kids' names, of course, but there were 2 children that I had watched. So I'm watching them interact with people. I watched one of them literally walk out of the classroom cursing, super upset, a little bit, a tiny bit of violence, like, you could tell, like he's about to break.
Hmm.
So these 2 kids, and I'm not supposed to get involved with discipline at all. That's not part of my purview. I'm not supposed to interject myself in that way. I find the 2 kids over the course of 2, 3 days, and I spend a total of about 5 hours with them individually over those 3 days. Just saying, um, hey, I saw that you're really angry. Do you mind if like I just get a chance to talk to you? You don't have to tell me anything. I just want to know. I want to know more about you and what made you so angry. And of course, at first, there are no real words. And one of them in particular was like, well, why do you even want to talk to me? I mean, I don't know you. And I mean, and it's a pretty rough situation. It's a very challenging school, but it's full of hope. It's absolutely full of hope. Very high poverty. We've had 2 loaded guns taken off of students